Hey Vinny, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good, good to be here with you. And I see Maya and Siebren also in the here. Perfect, amazing. Siebren, I've invited you up to speak as well. If you don't see the invitation, then just request. Hey Maya, how's it going?
Hi, it's good.
Good, good. So glad to be here with you today.
Me too.
It's nice to finally meet. I mean, I guess this is like virtual meet, but voice meet, I guess. We've
Voice,
exchanged so many
yeah,
emails.
I know. I know. Closer and closer to real life me.
Yeah, right. One sense at a time. Uh,
Mhm.
let's see, Zebrin. There we go. Amazing. And thanks everyone for joining. I see Sasha, Casey, Whitney, Tony. Thank you all. Hey, Zebrin.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Good. How's everybody?
Good, good. I just realized I've been tagging the wrong account in everything I've been posting, so I do
Well,
apologize.
I haven't been on Twitter in like 2 weeks, so
Wow, that
it
sounds
just
foreign.
never got its claws in me.
Yeah, keep it that way.
Maybe.
So we'll just wait a couple more minutes for more folks to file in.
Sure.
In the meantime, if y'all don't mind tweeting about the space, just so that it refreshes at the top of the feed, that'd be wonderful. In the meantime, I always love to start with asking where people are calling in from. So, Maya, where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Los Angeles.
Nice.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Bright
Early.
and early.
A
Yeah.
little early for me, fortunately. My schedule.
Well, really appreciate you making the time. Then hopefully you have ample coffee there with you.
Oh yeah, I am drinking a coffee right now,
Perfect. You know,
which is great.
it's noon in New York and I'm also drinking coffee, so I don't know what that says about me or the time of the the time of the year. Vinny, where are you calling in from?
Here in New York as well, and with a pumpkin spice latte.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
Fancy.
that
fall
girl.
season.
But I made it at home, okay, with vegan oat milk. So I feel like
Oh
I know
wow, that's next
it's
Yeah,
up
level.
that
there.
really, that is next level. Wow. That's not, yeah, no, you're not even that kind of girl. Not that there is that kind of girl, but anyway, Zebrin, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. I'm in Red Hook, Brooklyn, as well in New York
Yeah.
City. Also, my 9 a.m.
Amazing. Well, three of us in New York, and then Maya's holding down the fort on the West Coast. This is wonderful.
hmm
Nice.
I'm moving to New York in about a month,
Oh,
so I'll see you there.
No
Coming to the dark
way.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming back.
Oh,
a
that's
few friends
awesome.
of mine that are out west have been talking to me about coming back here. What's
Really?
going on, y'all?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always very tempting, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was this like mass exodus from New York kind of during the pandemic, and now it looks like people are, I don't know, they're coming back.
Crawling back.
Exactly, literally crawling. Yeah. Well, it'll be great to have you here. Have you back
Yeah, I'm very excited to be there.
just in time for winter.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it is 5 after the hour, and we are recording this. So if anyone does miss, they can always listen back. And we're going to preserve these on our YouTube as well. So those will go out soon. So why don't we just go ahead and get started? Does that sound all right?
Fine by
Yeah, sounds
me.
good.
Perfect. Well, hello and welcome to the Source Talk series. My name is Elisabeth Sweet, and I'm the communications lead at Feral File. I am thrilled to be joined today by Maya Mann, Siebren Versteeg, and Vinny Valenzuela in a conversation called The Internet Made Me as part of the Source Talk series. Now, Source is a non commercial exhibition on Feral File featuring artworks made in the last several years which use software as a medium. The Source curators, Operator, Deaf Beef, and Casey Reas, spent hours discussing generative works that have impacted them over the years. And here's an excerpt from the curator's statement. This is not an attempt at a survey exhibition or defining a new canon. This is simply a selection of work that the four of us are thinking about right now. For those of us in the middle of art, code, and blockchains for the last few years, there's been little to no time to pause and reflect on what has happened. Sources our attempt to do that collaboratively. And the curators, Anya Catherine DJT from Operator, Deaf Beef, and Casey Reas all wrote wonderfully rich and thoughtful descriptions of each of the 25 works exhibiting in Source. And I really recommend going to check those out on the website after this talk. And then there are threads by Casey, or sorry, threads of the reflections by Casey on both Maya and Siebren's works. And those are pinned to the top of the chat. So check those out. They're really fun. And they also feature some works from the series. Now, as I mentioned, I'm super excited for this conversation today. These are two of my favorite pieces released over the last few years, and it's really an honor to speak with both of you, Maya and Siebren, about them today. And I'm also super happy to be joined by fellow poet, writer, and curator Vinny Valenzuela as my co-moderator. So let's jump in. I'll give a quick overview of the artwork and then we can hop into questions. I'm really excited about this conversation. So first we'll start with Maya Man. So Maya, you released Fake It Till You Make It on Art Blocks in August 2022. And this is from the description on the Art Blocks website. Fake It Till You Make It borrows from the bubbly language and pastel aesthetics of text-driven Instagram graphics to scrutinize the promotion of wellness, self-care, and confidence on social media. Now, this series, it's got like all the mean girl and boss girl energy wrapped in these sugar cookie aesthetics that catch your eye and then make you really think. And it's sort of this like cute but deadly and honestly like a little sad vibe. And as I understand it, Maya spent months scraping Instagram for images in order to train the algorithm, which was then transferred into like a Mad Libs-esque sort of model for the release. And there's some great videos out there of Maya explaining the process in depth. And so I really recommend checking those out because it's really a fun thing to listen to. And the series itself is so fun to visit in like sort of a Black Mirror kind of way. As a girl, I grew up in the 90s, and it really makes me reflect on the cliches and the normalized language of pop culture that we grew up with and grew to accept. And so turning to Siebren released for limited time on Arsenal in March 2023. Now, from Arsenal's description of the project, Siebren's algorithms generate painterly collages that transform images of current events into works that are erotic, prophetic, sometimes terrifying, often humorous, and always revelatory. Now, people who minted blank canvases can claim a moment as the algorithm generates new works. And this is again from Arsenal. If a collector can't bear to see the moment go, they can claim the work, cementing the art and their personal connection with time onto the blockchain. Now, the paint job in this collection is really amazing. Seriously, Siebren, the textures and densities that you're able to capture are astounding. And I also had the privilege of working on this drop with Siebren and the Arsenal team, and it was a lot of fun. And it really made me think about time and memory with this really kind of rich, unique aesthetic in this really unique generative series. So thank you for listening. I can't wait to dive into all of this with the three of you here today. And with that, I'm really delighted to pass it off to Vinny for our first questions.
Thanks, Elisabeth. I'm super happy to be here. As someone who still cherishes my MySpace days and actually reading the newspaper in print, I feel like this is a perfect space to be on with all of us together. So, Maya, I wanted to ask you a question first. Your practice interrogates social media as well as online content, as Elisabeth so depthly shared. And as well, you focus on how they have changed over the last 20 years. What have you learned about the way online media shapes us and how we in turn shape online media?
Yeah, I love this question. Because I feel like I grew up with, from maybe when I was 11 years old on, I was on the internet and spending a lot of my free time consuming content and also producing content, I guess for lack of a better word, where I was making videos on my flip video camera and uploading them to YouTube or uploading photos to Facebook. And so I feel like I grew up with this very reciprocal relationship between the way that I saw myself and the way that I engaged with the internet. And I feel like increasingly in my life, the internet has become almost like air. Like it's not this second space that is separate from my quote unquote real life. It's become really like the air that I move through day to day. It's like an extension of my world. And that's I feel like that's been intensified over the past 10, 20 years for me. And I'm really, with this piece, Fake It Till You Make It, and all of my work, I'm really trying to understand how our belief systems are formed and the way that we see the world is altered through the content that we consume. So like this genre of Instagram graphics that especially was super popular in like 2017 to 2020, it's easy to write them off and think they're silly or sort of nothing, but I felt like they represented this sort of like altered state in especially like feminine targeted ways to think about yourself. Yeah, so I think now the internet is like breathing, waking life. It's everywhere all the time, which feels very different from 10 years ago for me.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up like, yeah, I was on the internet as a little kid, and I think I got a Facebook when I was like 11, which now is like such a horrific thing to say and think about. But when I think about my social media experience as a younger person, it was like really separate from my real life. You kind of went to AOL Instant Messenger and whatever Yahoo chat rooms to kind of escape what you were doing in your real life. And MySpace was about, well, and I'll talk personally, if I'm a loser in my high school, I can be a cool emo kid on MySpace. Like it was very separate. So it's interesting to see that you could do that in the past and you really can't do that now.
Yeah, I feel like so much of specific social media platforms has changed over time too. Like the way that I use Instagram is so different now than 10 years ago. But I'm always hesitant about the way that we sort of colloquially refer to the offline world as real life or use it is real life. And I never want to undermine the sort of weight of people's and my own experience online because it is so real. It affects me so deeply. Yeah.
A little too real sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to give you a question, Siebren, I'd love to ask you about your current project for a limited time. It really hit me because I've been a freelance journalist for the last 6 or 7 years, and so like being a part of the news cycle is a little bit of a like obsession, kind of because of my work, but something I really care about as well. And so, the fact that this project has a constant generation of artworks based on current events and more specifically kind of news and content generated within the moment of generation, it really speaks volumes to both the proliferation of online content and to the 24/7 news cycle. So
Right.
what was the seed that inspired a project that essentially crowdsources meaning via which pieces they choose to immortalize on chain? Because some moments are going to strike certain people that just happen to come across the project at that moment. So yeah, what was the inspiration for that?
Well, yeah, I want to quickly just address what you and Maya were just speaking of. I wanted to just bring up this idea. I really love what Maya said about the internet not being in other space and it being like kind of the air that she breathes. And I think it makes me think of this Eflux book that came back a few years back called "The Internet Does Not Exist." And this idea that to say the internet does not exist is to say that there's no distinction any longer, right? It is not an other anymore, right? It need not even be defined or delineated, right? So for me, I think For a Limited Time actually stems from a body of work that I've been undertaking pretty much since I started using digital technology, which was to kind of try to create or speak within a system of real-time computing and generative art making. That project, at the end of the day, ultimately is pretty meta modern in that I'm able to produce algorithms that can make a lot more work than a single pair of hands might be able to make otherwise. And in some ways mirrors the kind of proliferation of content that you were speaking of. So for me, the news cycle or something like that really began as a way to sort of like place the viewer in the very moment at hand, right? So you're seeing and witnessing events that are in the art, which we often think about as an objectified circumstance that is removed from us and cemented or solidified in time. But then ideally the viewer then kind of realizes that that moment of time also is proliferating and is continuously in flux. So yeah, where am I going with that? That's basically the way that I've been using it, or thinking about incorporating the 24-hour news cycle into my work. I mean, again, that idea of a 24-hour news cycle, meaning that there is no news, there is no not
Exactly.
news, you know.
And you can't possibly read it all, you know. It's
Mhm.
overwhelming.
Right. So then if you're continuously enveloped on it, it's very hard to have some kind of critical take on this stuff, right? Because you're never really able to digest it, right?
Exactly.
And if you can't digest something, how can you develop any kind of criticality towards it?
Well, then it's like, let's say I've chosen a pitch for an article. Okay, I'm going to read something in the Wall Street
Mm-hmm.
Journal and something in the New York Times, and but then I found this tangential thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what was my 2 hours later? What was my pitch? Oh my god! So yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I mean, in many ways, it's very much, I think of it very much like a psychedelic experience. You know, we know that the world in front of us is infinite, but to be hyper aware of that infinitude at all moments in time makes it pretty difficult to conduct regular tasks, you know, or to engage in the world in a regular kind of way, or a way that we understand, right? A functional way, let's say.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something that I really love about this work by Siebren also, because it's extremely intimidating to try to make work about being online or the kind of constant stream of content, because it is so the experience is so maximalist. There's so much to sift through, and there's so much to think about when trying to even encapsulate it in an artwork. And I feel like the piece does that really nicely and is able to kind of like cut through the noise, but still emphasize the noise of the experience in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, what was really important is like putting the onus of, you know, concretizing or solidifying the compositions onto the collector, onto the viewer. Like that was really interesting, and that has been a really interesting experiment for me. I mean, I was kind of surprised to to realize that there were going to be I was going to be making a whole lot of Elon Musk and Donald Trump NFTs this year. But you know, that's what the public wound up kind of, you know, minting into the blockchain. So it's been a funny experience.
This kind of ties into something I've been thinking about in terms of both of your work using the internet sort of as this medium and as your source, and thinking about what kind of agency you have versus what the internet gives you and what the internet sort of provides. Maya, you like went through Instagram and you really like culled and tailored this collection that then fed the data set, which is different from Zebra, and how like, yeah, there are now NFTs minted with Donald Trump and Elon Musk with your name on it, which is, you know, maybe not what you had hoped for, but that's what you got.
Right.
And so I'm wondering, like, so much of the content like shapes so much of news media and pop culture, which I don't even know if there's a difference between the two anymore, shape our perception, but how much of our perception shapes the media that we consume? And in thinking about sort of the objectification of both the news and this moment, like what are we asking for versus what is given, and can we really distinguish between the two?
You want to start that, Maya?
Yeah, it's a challenging question. I mean, specifically with this project, I was most interested in not just media objects themselves, so these types of graphics that people were posting on Instagram, but the way that people allow that specific image to sort of filter through their minds and then seep into the way that they experience the rest of the world. So I mean, these graphics specifically, I feel like are very telling in terms of the way that we think about mental health and self-care culture nowadays. That's become a larger and larger aspect of pop culture. And I'm with the project, I wanted like having the computer regenerate these and create ones that don't exist. I'm interested in the process of people actually finding meaning in the ones that are generated as well. Thinking about, okay, so you experience something on your screen, you see it, but what really matters is then what happens on the other side of the screen, what happens in your brain and how you allow that to sort of seep through and affect your life. Um, and so there was something strange about making Fake It Till You Make It, because I found, I started the project kind of cynical, being like, these are bite-sized like pop therapy attempts that circulate on Instagram, and they have this very performative aspect of people wanting to not only like and comment, but then also repost them and say, like, this is what I believe. But I found that when I was outputting different iterations of Fake It Till You Make It, I often found that the language would be meaningful to me in some way, even if it sounded absurd from the computer. And even though it didn't make sense to the computer itself, I was able to impose meaning on them. So yeah, I'm kind of curious about that sort of like after process. You have the image object or the media object that's circulating in some way, but the way that people can interpret it is wildly different, and that sort of point in the process is what was most fascinating to me and why I made the piece in the first place. That makes sense.
No, it does.
No,
That's interesting. It reminds me. I mean, it's like a similar kind of engagement or way to sort of talk about abstraction, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like the point of perception by the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And by the artist in terms of like a kind of a call to action and a response, and a
Right.
kind of satisfaction you have with the response that your medium gives you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That sort of like completion moment where the audience is seeing it, interpreting it, and
Hmm.
experience.
it's interesting too to think about like whether we even have time to process what we're seeing. Like Zebra, you were saying that it's just all noise at this point. There's no signal. So you see these images, and when they're everywhere, they just kind of become a part of your landscape. And so do you even have time to try to process or change your perception about what you're seeing?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say that I've seen very little of my project. Yeah. I mean, in terms of like really like seeing what it's produced, because but for me the project of course is the algorithm itself, is the software itself, and that has always been kind of the case in my work. The artifacts are a different I have a different relationship to the artifacts or the products of my algorithms than I do to the algorithms themselves.
And I'm curious about the algorithm because as I mentioned at the top of the chat, like the paint and the way that you're able to create paint with code, I think is just profound. And so I'm wondering like why paint? Why this sort of like such a more of like an older medium with such a unique and innovative code set.
Um, it's a great question. It's one I've been trying to answer for a really long time. When I moved to New York, I had come here from Chicago, and Chicago in general is a much more kind of planned and gridded city, and I think that kind of work that's made there reflects that to some degree. And I was really pretty astounded to see how much abstract painting was still alive in New York City. And I became more and more interested in it, and I just didn't know how to engage with it. I have very no relationship really to painting, some relationship to sculpture. So it just kind of started as it's like they say, you be careful what you make fun of. And I started writing code to kind of try to mimic and mimic the kind of paintings that I was seeing and liking, and I just became really engaged with it. It just became a kind of an obsession, and it continues on. It's kind of like my way of being in the studio and kind of woodshedding as well, without necessarily having the abstract, the painting algorithms is something that I'm just going to probably continue to try to achieve and perfect that engagement with abstraction for the rest of my life. I mean, it really keeps me quite satisfied in terms of spending time alone in the studio and processing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it is funny, like be careful what you careful what you make fun of because it might take you. But no, really, I've admired this piece for so long and the aesthetics of it. And I am I'm so excited to see how it goes as you continue to hone it. And I'd love to just ask Maya quickly. This might be a tough question. Well, I don't know. But thinking about if you made Fake It Till You Make It now, I know it's only been, a little over a year since the last one, but do you see a different kind of pop culture Instagram aesthetic? Oh, is she gone? Looks like she's not here. Okay, well we can save that. Great. Well, Vinny, would you like to take it? Oh, here we go. Maya's back. Let me let her back
You
on.
might call it X, but it's still Twitter at the end of the day.
It's still Twitter doing its
Hi,
thing.
sorry, I lost connection for a second.
Oh, you're all good. You're all good. Glad you could get back. I just had a question for you about. So I know that that Fake It Till You Make It came out only, like a little over a year ago, but if you had to make it now, do you see a different kind of pop culture aesthetic pervading Instagram and this sort of content flows? Like, I know that you just had your project with Verse, and that was like kind of based in astrology and this sort of like luck culture. But so I'm wondering if there's something different that you're seeing now.
Yeah, well, more recently, I've actually been interested in this genre of content on TikTok. I feel like Instagram is it's a little bit dead compared to what it was maybe 5 years
It's
ago.
passe.
Yeah, and I think when I started making Fake It Till You Make It, I was really engaged with these graphics that had already been around for a couple of years, but the cycle and trend of content moved so quickly online. I felt like by the time the project released, it was sort of the tail end of the popularity curve of that type of posting. But something that I'm really fascinated by on TikTok right now is this sort of, and this gets at similar themes to both Fake It Till You Make It and I'm Feeling Lucky, which was the first project, but this sort of belief in the magical power and potential of consuming content on the internet. So this belief that if you like and share something, like often on Instagram, there's graphics in the caption, someone would say, comment this emoji to claim or to sort of like confirm that this sort of way of living will happen for you. And now on TikTok, I see a lot of videos that say something like, use this sound and everything you want to happen will happen in your life, or you will get perfect grades, or this person will like you back. And it's sort of this belief that the like re-performance or the performance of some action online will manifest something happening in your life. And that's also what I'm interested in. That's what underlies I'm Feeling Lucky, the collection that focused on the contemporary culture of astrology. This feeling that the way that we interact with the internet can sort of have some almost like magical effect on what happens in our day-to-day life. And so I've been saving a lot of those types of TikTok videos that and then everyone in the comments will say, oh, I claim this for myself. And by commenting that, they're like enacting some sort of something into action with the comment. So that's my current fascination.
It's like meme sorcery or something.
Yeah, meme sorcery, exactly. And it's weird. It almost like breaks the fourth wall to me because, you're like inside of this stream of content, and then suddenly there's this proposal that if you do something, some sort of online action, it'll sort of like break into your day-to-day life in a
Right.
positive way.
Yeah.
I think we've just coined the term meme sorcery. This is exciting.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I have a friend who has a wishcraft practice.
Oh yeah, very related.
What does that mean? Oh, witchcraft or wishcraft?
Wish.
Oh, whoa.
What's that?
Well, it's about manifestation. Yeah, and she's also a hypnotist, but yeah.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's a similar kind of culture, I think. Yeah, it's happening. And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
in
it's
some
definitely the
ways it
same.
is a response to like the kind of I mean, it's a response and a need for, a certain kind of control amidst,
Hmm.
so much, so much being bombarded by so much all the time at this point.
Yeah, desire for agency in some
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I can't help but think that like the sort of digital materiality of the medium of like commenting or posting, like you are just kind of like throwing it out there into this digital abyss. I wonder if that is more appealing to people than like, I don't know, like more of a physical or like in-person kind of connection or conversation. I don't know if that
Yeah,
is.
Yeah,
we really, it really is publishing. I mean, we're publishing so much, so fast now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of
yeah,
insane.
and
Like to the point that like I know I have felt Twitter fatigue and a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't keep doing this like 5 tweets a day," and all the rules we're seeing as far as how to get better engagement and stuff and why do we
Yeah,
care? But like especially in the NFT space, it's kind of this weird warped
yeah,
like social media is not social anymore. Even if it's you as yourself, it's turned into, you know,
yeah, yeah,
something not nice.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
I talk about the process of posting as self-actualizing in some way. Uh,
Hmm.
I feel like I've learned so much about who I am and how I want to see myself through the way that I've posted online over the past like decade plus. And I think that action of pressing post, uh, going back to what we were talking about like a little bit earlier in the conversation, that action of pressing post feels very active. It feels like something that you can show that you've done. And so thinking about the process of manifesting,
Hmm.
it feels like something you can easily do to sort of claim agency in your life. Um, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it also kind of is interesting in the context of minting, right? Because we're actually immortalizing something on chain versus like, I know sometimes I feel like my replies just go down into this ether and then I never see it again. And so it feels like it feels powerful, but it also feels kind of impermanent, and if Twitter goes down or X goes down, like who knows where all of this content is going to go. So there's
Yeah.
something kind of interesting about the feeling of things being permanent and impermanent at the same time, and blockchain kind of fitting into that in a cool way.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear about something that I really loved about both of you, which is um, your personal websites, your portfolios are both really, really cool. Like it was such a blast from the past to see this kind of early 2000s vibe in each of your websites. And so I'd love to ask you guys, and maybe Siebren, you can take this question first. Even though you both think about the internet deeply and interact with the internet in a subversive way, you've both chosen to design your personal websites in this early 2000s vibe. So, what about the earlier internet drew you to use that aesthetic on a website that represents you as an artist today?
Uh, I can honestly say, well, my website was built in the early 2000s.
It's
Not,
truly
it wasn't
OG.
a, yeah, it's not an appropriation. Every once in a while I do make small tweaks to it, but that's one thing I kind of miss about the early internet. It just works. It's functional. I'm not using any external libraries. It's a very simple HTML shell. With an ASP backend, which actually is connected to a database, which that database is also keeps all my inventory and all that. And I wrote it, I think in 98, 99, most of the backend. So my website is really ultimately a catalog and a database of my work and my practice over the years. And I've had no reason to update it or think about it in any other way, aesthetically or anything than that.
I love that answer so much. It's like it's doing what it needs to do. So we don't need anything fancy or like, because I think that's something, I've been working in online publishing for the last 10 years, and something we're always talking about is, oh, how do we lure the reader in? How we got to have a cool video like embedded in the
Right.
background. Like it's just this
Right.
constant bombardment of like,
Yeah.
how do you integrate new tech into your website? And then you're like, wait a second, we're not even talking about the content anymore. Like, we're talking about the
Correct.
scroll feature, and that doesn't actually
Yeah.
matter. So I love what you brought up of like, well, this is a portfolio. It's doing its thing. Like,
Right.
the work speaks
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely a lot of avant-garde-ly designed books out there, but at the end of the day, the most functional book really hasn't changed that much in thousands of years,
So true. Maya, what do you have to say about your website? Is it also from 1999 at its core?
It is not. It has not been online since 1999, but it does. Um, I mean, it pulls a lot, and in my work, I pull a lot too from early sort of net art browser default aesthetics. And I think it comes from this conversation about agency we're having. It comes from this desire to have more fine control over the presentation of myself and my work beyond, when I'm operating in these ecosystems that are social media platforms. You only have so much
Right.
control over how to present yourself aesthetically through the interface. And the personal website really offers an opportunity to make a statement, almost like the clothes you wear, about how you see yourself, how you see your work, and how you want other people to see your work. And I've actually been reflecting on recently my process. When I find someone new online, especially an artist, I like really want to look at their website. To see their work, yes, but often I can find their work in other places. But to understand how they want me to see their work, and I find it really informative. And so with my website, I had that in mind, and I want people to understand that my work is engaging directly with the internet. So I built the website myself. There's no like default like platform template that I use or anything. And it also uses a lot of the browser defaults in terms of the typeface, and the links, the way that the links look and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like I'm able to sort of build this home for my work online and present it in the way that I want it to be presented on the internet. And it's sort of the only place where I have control over that, which is important to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like an artist statement in a weird but
Mhm.
cool way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question, I guess, kind of piggybacking off of this. Well, just kind of in vein with the whole conversation, but thinking about. So I mentioned this earlier about how like the internet is sort of providing you the source material that you're both then using in your work here, exhibiting in source. And so I'm wondering, do you feel like you're collaborating with the internet? You've used the word engaging quite a few times, but like, is there sort of this like collaborative feel?
Yeah, I can sorry, I can start. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say collaborative. With the internet specifically, because the internet is this large looming presence. I feel like I'm more like poking at it and like foraging on the internet for for ways to bring it into my work. And I feel like the word collaborative puts this idea of me and the artist and the internet on sort of the same plane. And it feels more like the internet is looming large, and I'm sort of running around finding the little piece of it that I want to interrogate in a specific artwork, and then like physically scraping it off of the internet, putting it into the work, and then returning it back online in whatever form that the work takes. So I guess that's how I would describe it more. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I get that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about how the internet is sort of just like air. It makes me think of David Foster Wallace's like the story about the fish where they're swimming in the ocean
Oh
and
yeah,
they
this
don't
is
really,
water.
yeah, they
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
exactly, this is what they don't know what water is.
Right.
Yeah,
Because it's
exactly.
everywhere. Yeah. Zebrin, did you want to respond to that?
Again, the internet does not exist, right? I mean, same thing. Um, yeah, I mean, collaborative's fine, I guess, way to think about it. I mean, I think that the generation, or like at its very base, I mean, art and the generation of meaning is ultimately a collaborative and necessarily a collaborative one. Maybe historically, many artists wield their, weapons, in opposition to history and what has happened before. But I've always thought about it as being a very net history and the past as being a very important part of how something is looked at today and now. And the past is being generated, of course, at a ever increasing rate, right? We're creating history right now, and there's millions of other people creating it right now as well, and producing content that can be looked upon again. So I think again, it's that kind of like exponentially, like, approaching tale that is the thing that I guess I'm trying to maybe almost more like describe like what it's like to be alive right now, to be in this particular time on the planet.
Yeah, I really like that as a way of thinking about it. I also feel like my experience with Siebren's work is something I also like aspire to do, which is we are looking at the internet all the time, every day, but we're not really looking at it. And by
Right,
kind of taking
right.
pieces of the internet and then recycling it into the work, you're forcing people to look at it in a different way, even though they see it all the time, every day. That
Mhm. I like that. Earlier, as a person who's been kind of engaged with net art for some 20 years, at the beginning, I did a few projects that were online, and necessarily online because they were browser based or whatnot. But it came to me that like people weren't able to engage with my art the way that I wanted them to, with the seriousness that I wanted them to do when I made online projects. And I didn't feel like I was able to kind of consume art with the same kind of criticality that I have when I make patronage to a museum or a gallery or something. Like to have a piece of art in a browser right next to all my other stuff was
mhm.
really challenging in a way that I kind of just decided it wasn't I didn't really have a big dog in that fight.
Mhm.
So I just kind of ultimately decided I'm just going to do work in galleries and museums or whatever.
Mhm. Do you feel like that has changed generally in the culture of looking at art in the browser over the years, or do you feel like that's kind of still the
I
same?
mean, I think, yeah, I don't know. Not for me. For me, it hasn't changed. I still have a really hard time looking at art in a browser or online,
Me too.
or getting in the headspace that I get into when I go to a space to actually look at work in person.
Mhm. Yeah, the attention spans are just so different that you are able to kind of hone in a real physical space versus in the browser. It's a challenge.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. Yeah,
There's
but at the same time, like I look at, I mean, I look at so many things on my screen and I look at them critically, but like, when like there's too much art there already.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like just the engagement of what a pixel is doing is like just so freaking
It's
fascinating.
overwhelming.
But
Yeah, there really is this ritual kind of about going to a gallery or a museum, and it's hard when the thing that you do work on or that you make art on is the same thing that you then have to like
right,
unplug and process and absorb in a totally different way.
right.
Mhm.
Which, Feral File's an online gallery, right? We're founded
Hmm.
on art in the browser.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
it is something that's even challenging for me sometimes. Like I really have to close out all my windows. It's like this whole kind of process when I really want to sit with a show and absorb it.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is hard though. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. That's also what's amazing about Feral File too, though, is the way it serves as an archive too, because there's no sort of hierarchy. Like I can still go back and view the show in the way that the show was presented when it was originally online. There's not that like hierarchy of now I'm just viewing the images. And I've done that a lot with feral file shows, actually, with people's work. And it's nice to have access to the work in context in that way, sort of.
That's a really good point. I like that. Yeah. Well, it already is. I mean, online works are already basically like, yeah, relegated to a documentation kind of portfolio format.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's funny how there is this sort of timelessness. Like once a feral file show opens, it's always open, you know, in
Yeah.
perpetuity. But then there's also this other side of the accelerated time of the internet, right? How like everything's moving so fast, and like we were saying earlier, like if Twitter goes down, like maybe everything disappears, or like when something goes in the feed and it doesn't get engagement, like it's just kind of gone. Like there is this like ability to lose things on the internet while also having this profound ability to archive and make things maybe as digitally permanent as they can be.
Yeah. It actually stresses me out a lot when I'm think about the amount of content I consume all of the time, and that I think about this a lot more recently with TikTok, that I feel like it's so representative of this current moment, and this variability in humanity in the way that they post online, that I want to save so many TikToks as this sort of just archive of what I've seen and the way that people post. And, there is always this chance that the platform goes down and it's all lost. I almost want to start saving things on a hard drive or something.
That's absolutely fascinating way to think about it. I think more people should be doing or thinking about this kind of stuff, because that's going to be agency in the future, because switches can be pulled and history can be changed so quickly by powers that are completely out of our control. And I actually also think, and maybe make a plug, which I haven't seen yet, but they just opened a Harry Smith show at the Whitney Museum. And, besides being an incredible artist and filmmaker, he was also a pretty serious hoarder and collector of music and objects and things like that, and has vast archives, in his collection. And saw that as a really important thing. A friend was just telling me about how he used to, in the early '80s, there's this giant archive of him just walking up down the Bowery in the early '80s with a tape recorder and a microphone and just recording anybody and everyone with whatever they wanted to say, and engaging. And these are just like these incredibly unique artifacts that will never, could never have been here without an artist saying, this is important as that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually talking with my friend and artist Molly Soda recently, and thinking about how the process of being an artist online now is so much about collecting.
Mm-hmm.
We both have just like folders and folders, or like on like a platform like Arena, where you can sort of collect media. Just so many ways to collect what we
Mm-hmm.
see all of the time, because as an artist you want to have and remember these observations and these media objects that feel like otherwise they're going to be lost in the ether.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how that like process translates online.
But are you saving these things to online platforms?
Some of some of them I've saved to online platforms. Some of them I saved locally to a computer that I could
Yeah,
offload if I want.
Cool.
That's such an interesting notion of like agency is what you save, what you it's and it's kind of like what you choose to remember in this time when like everything's happening all at once. And you know Siebren, you have these pieces that are minted or that are generated for a limited time, and then they can just go if no one claims them. And that doesn't mean that they like lack importance or anything like that. It's just that like someone didn't choose to save them.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
are there any pieces you ever see that you're like, oh, like I wish someone would claim that moment, or like things like ones that slip away that kind of
I'm having a really hard time minting myself. I have quite a few blanks, and it's really hard for me to make that decision, and it always has been. I mean, I make these generative pieces, and for quite a few years I was saving them, and then filled up so many hard drives, and now I don't even save them. I just let my algorithms run, and just look at them every once in a while. Um, it's really become a pretty futile process or strategy.
You've like desensitized yourself.
Yeah, kind of. We'll see what's on the other side of that wormhole. I don't know yet. I'm starting to save again, but I haven't saved the images in years, about a year and a half now. But the algorithms are still running, just burning electricity, really. Um,
Yeah, I always find that really stressful about making generative work, this sort of
mhm,
attachment I have to certain output, but also the infinite nature of the algorithm. So you can't save it all. So
right,
you have to allow sort of like some pieces of the output to be representative of the algorithm as a whole, because you'll never capture
right,
the entire
right,
range.
right. Yeah, I'm actually trying to go back through my archives. I've written some software that'll allow me to easily delete things because I make
Mhm.
a lot of the compositions that I make are like 60,000 by 60,000 pixels or something, and they save out to folders as tiles, so
Mhm.
it's complicated just to go back and be like, not this one, because I need to have a thumbnail that I can look at, and then the thumbnail is tied to a folder with the images with the tiles in them. But
Oh yeah, wow.
I'm trying to like slice it back, hone it down to maybe just a few 100,000 or something.
Yeah, wow. It's a
A
lot.
So
few 100,000.
Yeah.
That's an unreal statement.
yeah.
So, I'd love to just tie in like a recent headline, which is about the fact that ChatGPT can now read stuff on the internet freely, and isn't limited to content pre 2021. And what I've been thinking about for the last couple months is that some people envision LLMs like ChatGPT to basically replace the search engine. Like it's not necessarily going to be just a writing tool. It'll be like, hey, what happened on this day 100 years ago? Like things that we randomly Google. And so I'd love to hear, conceptually speaking, how do you think this innovation will affect the way that we interact with the internet, and by extension, how we interact with one another?
Oh gosh.
Or are we just in the matrix fully now?
I mean, I don't know if that's the case either, or whatever that exactly means, or we have been anyway, or where that line of distinction will be drawn. I mean, I think if you could have asked us about what life is like now, 10 years ago, it would seem horrifying, probably, if we had a real window into it. But
Totally.
you know, it, it's a slowly boiling pot that we don't really realize is happening. So it's hard to imagine a radical transformation because, like you said, these things are being stepped out, in baby steps. And once we acclimate to one deeper level of, acclimation with the technology, another one is being introduced. So we kind of get used to that. I think the introduction of new is probably the speed of introduction of new is probably increasing, but again, it's really hard to see when you're inside it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we are still dealing with. I feel like that introduction of ChatGPT is just going to need to introduce new levels of literacy for people when they're
Yeah,
engaging with it, of understanding. And we're still dealing with this in the way that, we interact with the internet now, is teaching people and ourselves to understand what is, fact checked, what is true, what information we can trust. Um, and
yeah,
that's a problem that hasn't really been solved, and I don't think it'll be solved quickly with ChatGPT, which is,
right.
being trained on the internet now. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, more noise, exponentially more noise.
Yeah.
I think maybe the signal to noise ratio has probably just always been the same, but there's just more of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. And it's kind of interesting because we were talking about like the distinction between real life meaning life in the physical world versus internet life. And now internet life is being divided up again into what is human made and what is made by a machine. So it's like constantly this question of what is real is like changing faster than we can even answer the last iteration of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, but the AI is ultimately human made too, right? I mean, it's but merely a slurry of what's been said and done before, you know? Think about, I mean, in many ways, as much as we use and interchange the generative with AI, I think they're actually very different. I mean, generative ultimately is also limited by what computation, how many bytes of computation you're able to have. Ultimately, absolutely limited. When we're talking about computation,
Yeah.
as opposed to the natural, the infinitude of the natural world. I mean, that's the great distinction, is the distinction to once again really look at the distinction between the analog and the digital, which is still true. As much as we're able to make the digital into this so vast, that it seems impenetrable to think about its limitations, it is still ultimately a limited medium. At the end of the day, you will hit a 0 or a 1.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Kind of calming in a way.
Well, I think this conversation has been absolutely amazing. We are approaching the hour, so if there are any last thoughts, or just final comments on what we've talked about today, or Zebra and Maya, if either of you want to talk about what's coming up next for you, really happy to hear.
You want to go, Maya?
Sure, I can go. seeing who would take it first. Yeah, no, I mean, this conversation has been really meaningful for me. Siebren, I really admire your work and the way that you've been engaging in this sort of collaging act on the internet for so long. It's not an easy task, and yeah, a lot of my favorite artwork does that. So yeah, it's been really fun to talk. I guess in Los Angeles, there's a large group show, Interreality, opening on October 14th. That's put on by Bitforms and PR for Artists, the groups. And so, yeah, that's happening October 14th in LA. And then I'm working on a book of Fake It Till You Make It, the project that we're talking about today, to be released in early next year. So I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Ditto, Maya, and I look forward to meeting you because I'm also in Interreality.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. Great.
yeah,
Will you be here?
yeah, I'm coming out on Tuesday, so we'll have to meet up.
Oh great, that'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We can carry on this conversation in person.
Sounds great.
So
Cool.
fun. Let the FOMO ensue. Sorry, Zebra, did you want to add anything else?
No, we're good.
Okay. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Yeah,
It was
this
so
conversation, yeah, it's been amazing. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been so much fun and honestly really enlightening. It's given me a lot to think about. And I just sort of to wrap it up, at least one of the things that I'll walk away with, although I've taken extensive notes, is that like in a time when the internet is everything and everywhere, and this noise is limitless, it seems like the signal is what you choose to save and what you choose to preserve, really what you
Mhm.
direct your attention to. And we still do have agency, even though this is the air we breathe. Um, so really just again want to thank you, Maya, Zebrin, and Vinny, my co-moderator. This has been wonderful. And yeah, excited for you all to continue the conversation in LA. Hope that we can continue the conversation all together when everyone's in New York. That'd be great. But with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. And I just want to say that the exhibition of Source is still up or it's up now, as we've said, in perpetuity. And you can go and visit the exhibition, explore Maya and Zebrin's works that are featured there, and also read the reflections on both works by Casey Reas and the other reflections of the other pieces by Operator and Deaf Beef. And so, coming up next in the talk series, tomorrow we're joined by Sasha Stiles and Judy Mom and Dada in a talk called Creating the Creative, moderated by Deja T, who's the other half of Operator. And then on Monday, we're closing the Source Talk series in a discussion called The Fabrics of Time and Space with Ana Lucia, Finga Code, Sarah Zucker, and Travis Smalley. And that will be moderated by Madeline Pierpont. And not Source Talk related, but something that I definitely want to mention, something that we're really excited about at Feral File, is the 39th exhibition that opens next week on October 12th. This exhibition is called Truth, and it's curated by Adam Berninger. And it features PressTube, Bezor, Charlotte Dan, Tyler Boswell, Hal0999, Lisa Orth, Ella Hopner, and David Seven. And if you are in LA, be sure to check out Interreality. Maya's in it, Siebren's in it. The lineup is unreal. Mika has done an incredible job. So really congratulations to you both on that show. I can't wait to see pictures. Again, just thank you all so much. My name is Elisabeth Sweet, and I wish everyone a really wonderful day. And we'll see you back tomorrow for the Source Talk series. Thanks.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.